My name is Agnes Periwinkle, and I am 83 years young, though some days my bones tell a different story. I've lived a life that's seen more changes than the seasons themselves, from the black and white television sets of my youth to these handheld computers everyone stares at now. My husband, Arthur, God rest his soul, was a good man. He worked hard, saved harder, and made sure we had a roof over our heads and food on the table. We built a life, brick by brick, in a quiet little house on Elmwood Drive, a house that held all our memories, from our children's first steps to Arthur's last breath. That house, you see, it wasn't just wood and nails, it was the very heart of everything we had, and Arthur, bless his foresight, had made sure it was mine and mine alone, a fact I had kept tucked away like a precious secret. After Arthur passed, the house became a little too big, a little too quiet. My pension, combined with what Arthur left me, was enough to keep me comfortable, but not enough to ignore the creeping loneliness. My daughter, Clara, with her perfectly coiffed hair and even more perfectly arranged life, would visit, but her visits felt more like inspections. "Mother, you need a new rug," she'd say, or "Have you thought about assisted living?" Then there was my son, Thomas, a man perpetually teetering on the edge of a new business venture, always with a bright idea and an even brighter need for a temporary loan. They both had their own families, and I, it seemed, was becoming more of a responsibility than a beloved matriarch. The idea of them moving in came from Clara. Her husband, David, a man whose ambition often outstripped his success, had faced another unforeseen setback in his real estate endeavors. Thomas suggested he and his wife, Bethany, along with their 2 teenagers, could also move in. "It's a big house, Mom," he'd said, his voice laced with that familiar persuasive charm. "Plenty of room for everyone. Think of it, a real family home again." I, foolishly, let my heart overrule my head. The thought of laughter filling the quiet rooms, the smell of more than just my own cooking, the simple presence of family around me, it was a siren song I couldn't resist. My children, my grandchildren, under one roof. What could be more wonderful? So, they moved in. The house that had once felt too large now felt full. Too full. My antique furniture was shifted, my quiet hum replaced by the cacophony of multiple lives. I tried to find my place in this new arrangement. I cooked. Oh, how I cooked. Roast chicken, hearty stews, my famous apple pie, I poured my love into every dish. I cleaned, too, dusting the endless surfaces and scrubbing the floors that seemed to gather dirt at an astonishing rate. I did the laundry, folded clothes, even tackled the garden, coaxing reluctant roses into bloom. I believed, in my innocent way, that these acts of service, these quiet contributions, were my way of showing my love and earning my place. It started with little comments. "Mother, are you sure that's how you load the dishwasher?" Clara would ask, her tone dripping with passive aggression. Or Thomas, casually reaching for the last piece of pie, "Oh, you made pie? Didn't see you doing anything all afternoon." One chaotic evening, I was in the kitchen, carefully plating the pot roast I had tended to all day. David, Clara's husband, strode in, his face flushed with irritation from a phone call. He threw his hands up. "Honestly, Agnes," he huffed, not even looking at me, "sometimes I wonder what you even do around here. You eat, but you don't help." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I stopped, a half-filled plate in my hand. It wasn't just David's words. It was the way Clara nodded in agreement from the living room. It was the way Thomas, engrossed in his phone, grunted something that sounded like assent. In that moment, surrounded by the bounty of my labor, in the house that was legally mine, I felt utterly invisible. They said, "You eat but don't help." So, I left quietly. I didn't leave that night. That would have been too dramatic, too emotional. No, my decision was cold, like ice forming slowly on a windowpane. For the next 3 days, I became the ghost they already believed me to be. I watched them. I saw how Clara and David had taken over my master bedroom, their expensive clothes spilling out of the closet Arthur built. I saw how Thomas and Bethany used the den as their personal office, stacks of business papers covering the desk where I used to write letters. My grandchildren, bless their hearts, were just teenagers, but they had learned from their parents, leaving trails of wrappers and empty glasses for someone else, for me, to pick up. They were living in my home like it was a full-service hotel, and I was the invisible, unpaid staff. The final straw, if I even needed one, came on Thursday. Thomas approached me, all smiles and false charm. "Mom," he said, leaning against the kitchen counter, "I know things have been a bit tight for us, but I've got this incredible opportunity. A real game changer. I just need a small bridge loan, say, $10,000? Just to get it off the ground." He said it so casually, as if asking for a cup of sugar. He was asking to borrow money from the woman his brother-in-law had just accused of being a freeloader. The audacity of it stole my breath. I simply looked at him, my hands gripping the sink, and said, "I'll have to think about it, Thomas." His smile faltered, replaced by a flash of annoyance, as if my hesitation was an insult. That Friday, they announced they were all going away for the weekend. A family bonding trip to a lake cabin. I, of course, was not invited. "You'll be fine here, right, Mother?" Clara said, not as a question, but as a statement. "It'll give you a chance to rest." Rest. As if I was the one who needed it. I smiled my polite, grandmotherly smile and nodded. "You all have a wonderful time," I said. I helped them pack their bags. I made them sandwiches for the road. I waved goodbye from the porch, a perfect picture of the doting matriarch. The moment their cars turned the corner, the smile fell from my face. I went back inside, not to my small guest room, but to the hall closet. I pulled out a small, worn suitcase. I didn't pack much. A few changes of clothes, my toiletries, the silver locket with Arthur's picture, and a heavy, metal lockbox from the back of my closet. I walked through the house one last time, touching the furniture, the photographs, the walls that held my entire life. Then, I went to the kitchen, took my house key off the ring, and placed it squarely in the middle of the clean, empty counter. I didn't leave a note. What was there to say? They had said it all. I called a cab, and as it pulled away from Elmwood Drive, I didn't look back. I was heading to the Willow Creek Senior Residence, a place I had researched weeks ago, just in case. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, and it was mine. The room at Willow Creek was small. It had a single bed, a dresser, a small armchair, and a window that overlooked a quiet courtyard with a bird bath. It smelled of lemon polish and faint, lavender-scented soap. After the constant noise and clutter of my own home, the silence was deafening, and it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I sat on the edge of the bed, the springs creaking softly, and for the first time in months, I felt my shoulders unclench. I wasn't a burden here. I wasn't an unpaid maid. I was Mrs. Periwinkle, in room 21B, a paying resident. The dignity in that simple transaction felt like a warm blanket. I spent the first day just breathing. I ate my meals in the communal dining room, where people actually spoke to me, asking my name, where I was from. I met a woman named Midge, who had a wicked sense of humor and taught me how to cheat, just a little, at gin rummy. I slept an entire night through without being woken by a slamming door or a late-night argument. But I wasn't just resting, I was preparing. On Monday morning, I opened the metal lockbox I had brought with me. Inside, beneath my marriage certificate and Arthur's discharge papers from the army, were two things: the deed to the house on Elmwood Drive, and a small, leather-bound notebook. The deed was ironclad. Arthur wasn't a sentimental man, but he was a protective one. When he got his diagnosis all those years ago, he'd had our lawyer, Mr. Callahan, draw up the papers. The house was put into a trust, with me as the sole trustee and beneficiary. It was mine. Entirely, completely, and irrevocably mine. My children knew I owned the house, of course, but I don't think they ever understood the power that came with that ownership. They just saw it as the family home, a resource to be used, like my time and my energy. The notebook was something else. It was my secret. For the past 20 years, every time I had helped my children, I had written it down. Not out of spite, but just to keep track. I picked up the phone at the desk and dialed a number I knew by heart. Callahan and Associates, a crisp voice answered. "I'd like to speak to Mr. Callahan, please," I said, my voice steady. "This is Agnes Periwinkle." There was a pause, and then his familiar, rumbling voice came on the line. "Agnes. It's been too long. Is everything all right?" I took a deep breath. "Hello, James," I said. "Everything is changing. I need to see you. I have the deed, I have my notebook, and I have a question. How quickly can we sell my house?" There was a heavy silence on the other end, and then, "Agnes, what's happened? Are you in trouble?" I looked out the window at the little bird splashing in the bath. "No, James," I replied. "For the first time in a long time, I'm not in trouble at all. I'm getting out." My family returned on Sunday night to a dark, quiet house. I know this because Clara called me. I let it ring. And ring. And ring. Finally, a text message pinged on my little flip phone. "Mother, where are you? The house is empty. Call me." I looked at the message, took a sip of the lukewarm tea Midge had brought me, and turned the phone to silent. I went to bed and slept soundly. The next morning, my phone was a disaster. 12 missed calls from Clara, 8 from Thomas, and 3 from David, each one escalating in tone from confusion to annoyance to outright panic. The text messages were a story in themselves. "Are you at the neighbors?" Followed by "This isn't funny, Mother. Then we're calling the police if you don't answer." Around 10 in the morning, I finally answered. "Hello, Clara," I said calmly. Her voice was a shriek. "Mother! Where are you? We were worried sick. We thought you'd fallen. We thought, why is the house empty? Where did you go?" I let her finish, her words tumbling over each other in a torrent of feigned concern. "I am perfectly safe, Clara," I said, my voice even. "I have moved into the Willow Creek senior residence. I decided it was time." The silence on her end was profound. I could almost hear her trying to process this. This wasn't in her plan. I had taken control. Willow Creek," she stammered. That's a nursing home. Why would you do that? We're right here. You're supposed to be with us." "I didn't feel I was with you, dear," I replied, still calm. "I felt I was in your way. And I believe David was right. It was time for the person who only eats and doesn't help to find somewhere else to be." I heard a sharp intake of breath. David's voice came on the line, loud and booming. "Agnes, what is this? Some kind of stunt to make us feel guilty? You know I didn't mean it like that. Now, pack your things, we're coming to get you." That was when the old Agnes would have crumbled, apologized, and gone back to her tiny room to be a good, quiet mother. But the old Agnes was gone. "No, David, you will not be coming to get me," I said, and my voice had a spine of steel I hadn't used in years. "I am fine where I am. You all wanted the house, you have it. Enjoy." I hung up the phone before he could reply. I knew this was just the beginning, but I had thrown the first stone. They thought they were worried about me. They had no idea they should be worried about themselves. That same afternoon, I met with Mr. Callahan. He was horrified as I calmly laid out the story of the past few months, his face growing darker with every detail. When I finished, he looked at me over his steepled fingers. "Agnes, this is unconscionable. But are you sure? Selling is final." I pushed the leather-bound notebook across his desk. "Read it, James," I said. "Read what it's cost me to be their mother." He opened it, and I watched his eyes scan the pages, detailing 20 years of loans that were never repaid, down payments I'd covered, college tuitions, car repairs, and credit card debts I had quietly erased. He closed the book, his face grim. "All right, Agnes," he said, pulling a fresh legal pad toward him. "Let's get this done. And let's do it quietly." James Callahan was more than just my late husband's lawyer, he was his best friend. They had grown up together, and he looked at me with the protective gaze of a brother. As he read through my little notebook, his expression shifted from professional concern to quiet, simmering fury. The entries were not emotional, they were factual, written in my neat, looping cursive. May 12, 2004, $5,000 to Thomas for Startup Capital. September 3, 2007, $15,000 to Clara and David for the down payment on their first condo. January 20, 2012, $7,200 to pay off Thomas's credit card debt. He said it was identity theft. August 5, 2016, $3,000 to Clara for the children's essential summer camp. The list went on, spanning 2 decades and totaling a sum that made even James whistle under his breath. "Agnes," he said, closing the book gently. "This is staggering. This is your retirement. This is the money Arthur left for you." I just nodded. "It was always just a little help, Mom. Just to get us through a rough patch. I never wanted to keep score, James. I truly didn't. But after Arthur died, I had to. I felt so alone, and I needed to remember why I felt so poor when we had saved so much." I pointed to the last entry, made just 2 days before I left. November 14, 2024, $200 for groceries. David complained I bought the wrong brand of coffee. Thomas asked for $10,000. Clara's children needed new tablets. It was a stark, brutal summary of my existence in that house. James stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the busy street. "They didn't just disrespect you, Agnes. They bled you dry. They consumed your inheritance, your pension, and your peace, and then had the gall to call you a burden." He turned back, his face set. "We won't just sell it. We will sell it fast. I know a private broker who specializes in quiet, off-market sales. We won't even put a for sale sign on the lawn. They won't know a thing until it's done. The market is hot. That house, in that neighborhood? It will be gone in a week." He then looked at the notebook. "And this," he said, tapping the cover, "this is our armor. When they come crying, and they will, this is our answer." My family, in the meantime, had decided on a new tactic, annoyance. Since I wouldn't come home, they decided to bring the home to me. Clara and Bethany started showing up at Willow Creek unannounced, bringing me flowers I was allergic to and boxes of chocolates I couldn't eat. "Mother, it's so sad here," Clara would say, wrinkling her nose at the clean, simple decor. "You don't belong here. You belong with family." Thomas tried his angle, too, catching me in the hallway. "Mom, this is costing a fortune. Why are you wasting your money on this place when you can live at home for free?" The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about their inheritance. They were worried their free ride was over. And they were right. The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. James handled everything. He had an appraiser, a stager, and a photographer all visit the house on a Tuesday morning when he knew everyone would be at work or school. He told me the stager had called him, laughing. "I've never seen a house so lived in," she'd said. "There are 4 different sets of dishes, clothes in every closet, and it looks like 5 families are camping out." James had paid for a rush cleaning service just to make the place presentable for the photos. The house was listed privately on a Wednesday. By Thursday, there were 3 offers. By Friday evening, we had accepted an all-cash offer from a young doctor and his family, well over the asking price. They wanted to close in 10 days. While my house was being sold out from under them, my family was busy trying to convince the staff at Willow Creek that I was incompetent. Clara, in her sharpest business suit, had demanded a meeting with the director, Mrs. Gable. "My mother is confused," Clara insisted, her voice full of false sympathy. "She's 83, you know. She's not capable of making these decisions. We are her family, and we are here to take her home." I had been invited to this meeting, a fact Clara didn't know until I walked in with Mr. Callahan by my side. Clara's face went pale. "James? What are you doing here?" "I am here as Mrs. Periwinkle's legal counsel," James said, his voice pure granite. He placed a file on the desk. "And I can assure you, Mrs. Gable, that my client is of perfectly sound mind. In fact, she's sharper than most. She has simply decided to change her living situation." He then produced a copy of my healthcare proxy and power of attorney, all recently updated, all notarized, all naming him as my proxy, not my children. Clara looked at the papers as if they were a snake. You changed it?" "It was supposed to be me," she sputtered. "Yes, dear," I said sweetly. "I decided the person in charge of my life should be someone who actually values it. Now, if you'll excuse us, I have a gin rummy game." We left Clara sitting in the director's office, her mouth open. The sale was finalized the following Tuesday. The new owners were lovely but eager to move in. The next step was the one I dreaded, but James insisted it was necessary. On Wednesday morning, a certified letter arrived at Elmwood Drive, addressed to current occupants. At the same time, a large, official-looking sign was staked into the front lawn. It wasn't a for sale sign. It was a sold sign. And right below it, a smaller sign read, "Welcome home, Dr. and Mrs. Patel." My phone started ringing at 5:02 p.m. This time, I knew I had to answer. It was David. And he wasn't shouting. His voice was a low, terrifying whisper. "Agnes. What did you do?" "I did what any homeowner would do, David," I replied, my voice as calm as the pond outside my window. "I sold my property. It was a seller's market, you know." I heard a crash on the other end, like he had dropped the phone or thrown it. Then Clara was on the line, and she was sobbing. Not sad sobs, but the hot, angry tears of a child who has had their favorite toy taken away. "You can't do this. You can't. This is our home. Where are we supposed to go? Where are my children supposed to go? You're throwing your own grandchildren out on the street." "That's a very dramatic way of putting it, Clara," I said. "As I recall, you have a condo that you've been renting out. Perhaps you could move back there. And Thomas has his wife's family. I'm sure you'll all find somewhere to land." Thomas grabbed the phone. "Mom! You evil old woman. After everything we've done for you. We took you in." The sheer, breathtaking nerve of that statement almost made me laugh. "Took me in? Thomas, you were living in my house. You were all living in my house, rent-free, for almost a year. You were eating my food, using my utilities, and telling me I was a burden." "But, the money," he sputtered. "The money from the house. That's our inheritance. You can't just spend our inheritance." And there it was. The real, ugly truth. They were never worried about me. They weren't worried about the house. They were worried about the money. They had already counted it, spent it in their heads. They saw me as nothing but a living, breathing obstacle between them and their payday. "There seems to be a misunderstanding," I said, and my voice was so cold it could have frozen water. "It is not, and never was, your inheritance. It was my asset. And I have sold it. The new owner's close in 1 week, David," I continued, as he had apparently taken the phone back. "You have, according to the official eviction notice you should have received today, 30 days to vacate the premises. I'd suggest you start packing." You've all accumulated quite a lot of things. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Midge, who had been sitting with me, patting my arm, looked at me with wide, admiring eyes. Agnes Periwinkle, she cackled, you are my new hero. That night, I didn't sleep well. Not from guilt, but from a strange, hollow feeling. I had done it. I had cut the cord. But in doing so, I had confirmed the one thing I never wanted to believe, that my children didn't love me. They loved what I could give them. The 30 days were a storm of desperation. They tried everything. They sent the grandchildren to Willow Creek, their eyes wide and coached, to tell me how much they missed me and how scared they were. It almost broke me, but I knew I was not the one who had put them in this position. Your parents are adults, my dears, I told them gently, giving them cookies. They will figure this out. This is not your fault. Then came the legal threats. I received a furious letter from a lawyer Clara had hired, claiming I was mentally unfit and had been unduly influenced by Mr. Callahan. They were seeking to have the sale annulled and to have me declared a dependent, James, and I met them in a sterile conference room. Clara, David, Thomas, and their bulldog of a lawyer sat on one side. Me and James sat on the other. Their lawyer started, all bluster and accusation, talking about elder abuse and fiduciary duty. When he was finished, James just smiled. Are you done? He asked. He then slid 2 binders across the table. Binder 1, he said, is a full psychiatric evaluation of my client, Mrs. Periwinkle, conducted 3 days ago by a board-certified geriatric psychiatrist. It declares her exceptionally sharp and fully competent. Binder 2, he said, and his smile widened, is a copy of Mrs. Periwinkle's personal ledger. He opened the binder to the first page. You claim your clients took Mrs. Periwinkle in, James said, his voice filling the room. But this ledger shows that my client has been financially supporting your clients for 20 years. He began to read. $5,000, 2004. $15,000, 2007. $7,200, 2012. He went on, page after page, number after number. Clara's face went from angry to ashen. Thomas looked like he was going to be sick. David just stared at the table. James finally closed the book. The total, not accounting for inflation, is over $180,000 in loans and gifts. That's not including the free rent, food, and utilities for the past year, which we've estimated at a conservative $30,000. He leaned forward. My client is not the one who has been taken advantage of. You have been systematically draining her for decades. She sold her own house, which she is legally entitled to do, to protect herself from you. Now, if you pursue this frivolous lawsuit, I will not only countersue for harassment, I will file a civil suit for repayment of every single dollar in this notebook, with interest. Are we clear? Their lawyer looked at his clients, who were utterly defeated, and slowly nodded. We are clear, he mumbled. The fight was over. They had 30 days. The house was gone. And so was the money they thought they were owed. I didn't see them go. Mr. Callahan handled the final walkthrough. He told me the house was a mess. They had left trash, broken furniture, and angry, spiteful holes in the walls. They had taken their revenge in the only way they had left, by being destructive. It hurt, but James had already hired a crew to clean and repair everything for the new owners. The sale closed, and suddenly, a very large sum of money was sitting in my bank account. It felt strange. It was Arthur's legacy, my security, and the price of my freedom. I sat with James in his office, looking at the final statement. So, what now, Agnes? He asked. A cruise? A fancy condo in Florida? I thought about it. I could travel the world, buy expensive things. But I looked back at the past few months. I thought of Midge and the other residents at Willow Creek. It was a good place, but it was just a place. It wasn't a home. And it was expensive. I saw people there who were lonely, whose families visited even less than mine did. You know, James, I said slowly, Willow Creek is fine. But I think I can do better. I had an idea, a little spark that had been growing since the day I moved in. What if I could build a place? I asked. Not a facility. Not a home. But a house. A real house, for people like me. People who have been forgotten. James looked intrigued. A non-profit? A foundation? I shook my head. Simpler than that. I want to buy a house. A big one. Maybe a duplex or a small apartment building. Something with a garden. And I want to create a community. We'd all have our own rooms, our own space, but we'd share the kitchen, the living room. We'd cook together, watch movies together. We'd hire a nurse to come by, maybe a cleaner, but we'd live. Not just wait. James leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. Like a co-op. For seniors. Exactly. I said, feeling a rush of excitement I hadn't felt in years. And I wouldn't call it a residence. I'd call it the Periwinkle House. A place where you don't have to earn your keep. A place where you are wanted. So, we started looking. We found a beautiful, rambling old Victorian house that had been converted into 4 apartments. It was a little rundown, but it had good bones, a big porch, and a yard overgrown with roses. It was perfect. I bought it with the house money. I used the rest to set up a trust to pay for the taxes, the upkeep, and to subsidize the rent for those who couldn't afford it. I invited Midge to be the first resident. She took one look at the porch swing and said, Agnes, if you don't give me the apartment with the morning sun, our friendship is over. I had found my purpose. I wasn't just an old woman who ate. I was a founder. It's been a year now. The Periwinkle house is full. Midge is in the sunny apartment, just as she demanded. We also have a Mr. Henderson, a retired music teacher who plays the piano in the evenings, and a Mrs. Gable, yes, the same Mrs. Gable, the former director of Willow Creek, who retired and found she was just as lonely as her residents. We're a strange, wonderful, noisy family. We have dinner together every night. We argue about politics, we play cards, and we tend to the rose garden, which is finally thriving. My hands, still gnarled with arthritis, are busy. I cook, I clean, I garden. I do all the things I used to do. But here, when I place a pie on the table, Mr. Henderson raises a glass and says, to Agnes, our queen of pastry. Here, my work is not just seen, it is celebrated. I still have the leather-bound notebook. I keep it in my desk. Sometimes, I take it out and look at it. The money is all gone, transformed into brick and mortar, into safety and community. The proceeds from the sale didn't just buy my freedom, they bought freedom for 3 other people, and I hope, many more to come. I am, at 84, happier than I have been in decades. My life is full. My purpose is clear. I am not a burden. I am a blessing. I heard from my children only once more. It was a letter, from Thomas, of all people. Not a text, not a call, but a real, handwritten letter. He wrote that Clara and David had lost their condo, their finances were a wreck. He and Bethany were living in a tiny apartment, and he was working 2 jobs. The letter was full of regret, of I should have and I didn't realize. He said he finally understood what I had done for them, now that he was the one everyone was leaning on. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask to come back. He just asked, Mom, are you happy? I wrote a reply. I told him about the Periwinkle house. I told him about Midge and the roses. I told him that I was, for the first time in so long, truly and deeply happy. I told him I forgave him. Not for them, but for me, because I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. I told him that my new home was built on a simple foundation, that everyone, no matter their age, deserves to be treated with dignity. I told him I hoped he would learn to do the same. I signed it, sealed the envelope, and put a stamp on it. It sat on my desk for a week. But in the end, I never mailed it. I didn't need to. I had already said everything that needed to be said. My new life was my final word. Agnes found her peace. Do you think she should have mailed the letter to her son? Why or why not? Thank you for following this story, and please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.